Howdy doody everybody, it's Mrs. MacPhail. Today your learning target is to change centimeters to millimeters and millimeters to meters. You should also be able to read decimals to the thousandths place. So let's get started. A reminder that we're going to be working with the metric system today. So we will be working with measurements in centimeters, millimeters, and meters. So for example, we could have the pen is 10 centimeters long. Centimeters mean that in 1 meter there's 100 centimeters. Millimeters, there's 1,000 millimeters in 1 meter. And we might even come across decimeters in your lesson in class, and 10 decimeters are equal to 1 meter. Won't talk about decimeters too much in this video, but in case it comes up in your lesson in class, you know what that is. We're also going to talk about precipitation. And that would be rain, snow, sleet that falls to the ground from the sky. So for example, in January, the precipitation is usually snow. Hey, wait a minute, I know that person. Well, little did you know, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, Mrs. MacPhail used to be a meteorologist before she became a teacher. And lucky for you, meteorologists love talking in decimals. And they also love talking about precipitation. And lucky for you again, we can talk about precipitation using the metric system. Cool beans. Let's take a look at the map across the United States. This map shows the average precipitation during the month of September. So over all of these years, 30 years actually, they've added up all of the precipitation, they've divided it by 30 years, and they've found the average precipitation during the month of September. If you notice in looking at the numbers here, they seem to be a lot higher in the southeastern United States compared to the western and southwestern United States. So the southeast looks like they get a lot more rainfall in the month of September on average than other places in the country. Let's zoom in a little bit closer and take a look at New York City. New York City during the month of September averages 10 and 7/10 of a centimeter of precipitation. Now, today I want you to think about this. In the past, we've been talking about one whole as being like the flat hamburger or the meter stick. But today we're going to be talking about the whole being 1 centimeter. And it's important to establish what that whole is so that our decimals and our fractions make sense to us. Another way that this might make sense to you is if we were to write 10 and 7/10 of a centimeter as a fraction, it would look like this: 10 and 7/10 of a centimeter. That means that it's over 10 centimeters, but not quite 11 centimeters of precipitation. Okay, let's move on. Something cool in the metric system world. We know that there's 100 centimeters in 1 meter, but in every 1 centimeter, this is a magnified view of a centimeter, we have 10 millimeters. So between the 0 and the 1 mark on the centimeter side of the ruler, we could count these dash marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So each of these little dash marks are millimeters. So in that 1 centimeter, we have 10 millimeters. So I'm just going to jot that on here for you. So we have 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter. So if you think in this whole 10 centimeter stretch here, if we have 10 here, 10 millimeters here, 10, 10, 10, you would end up with 100 millimeters in just 10 centimeters. So we know that if there's 100 millimeters in 10 centimeters, or you can think of it as 100 millimeters in one of our yellow longs or blue longs, whatever you're using, it would take 100, 200, I could keep going, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1,000. It would take 1,000 little millimeters to line up all the way down to 100 centimeters. Let's think of this as a different way. We know that 1 long is 1/10 of a meter. Here's it in decimal form. Our little block, which was the centimeter, would be 1/100th of a meter, and that would be it in decimal form right there. And now we have millimeters, which if there's 1,000 millimeters in 1 meter stick, you could say that 1 millimeter would be 1/1000th of a meter, and look at how many zeros it takes before you get to the thousandths place. This would be your tenths, your hundredths, and your thousandths place. So let's try some data here. Let's take a look at one of the rainiest cities during the month of September in the country, and that would be Jacksonville, Florida, down here in the southeastern part of the United States. Jacksonville gets 20/1/10 of a centimeter in the month of September on average. So step one, if I were to give you a centimeter ruler here, and we've kind of chopped it a little bit short, it only goes up to 22 centimeters, but that's okay because our data will fit. Where would the mark go as if it gets 20/1/10 of a centimeter? This is 0 centimeters, this is 22 centimeters. So 20 centimeters is right here, but we have a little bit more than 20 centimeters, but not quite 21. So remember that these are centimeters, and in between our centimeters, we have the 10 dash marks because each of these little dash marks would be 1 millimeter. So if this is 20 and no millimeters, this little line right here, the first one after 20, would be 20/1/10 of a millimeter. I hope you can see that okay. So that's where your dash would go. Now, here's the first step in order because we want to get our centimeters into millimeters and our millimeters into meters so we can work with fractions and decimals. So here are some steps on how you can do that. How many millimeters would be in 20/1/10 of a centimeter? Well, you know that in every centimeter there are 10 millimeters. So you can think of it like a multiplication problem and multiply this number by 10. You can either do that in your head or you can break out your handy dandy calculator. 20/1/10 of a centimeter times 10 millimeters. So in every single one of those 20/1/10 centimeters, there's 10 millimeters, which means we have 201 millimeters. I'm sorry, did you just catch that I said 201? Shame on Mrs. MacPhail. 201 millimeters. Just making sure you're paying attention. Now, let's remind ourselves, how many millimeters are in 1 meter? Maybe you need to go back in the video and take a look at that meter stick again. But if you remember, there's 1,000 millimeters, wow, in 1 meter. We're making progress. Do you see where we're going with this? What fraction of a meter is 1 millimeter? So 1 little tiny millimeter would be a fraction of what in 1,000 of them? We would write a part is 1 over the whole, which would be 1,000. And I'm just going to jot it like this. My meter's at the end. So what fraction of a meter is 201 millimeters? You would write 201, that's a crazy one, over 1,000 meters. Now we get to change it into a decimal. We know that we're working with 1,000 here. So we're going to have a decimal in the thousandths place. So I am going to write 201 as a decimal as 201 thousandths. That's also how you could say this fraction. Instead of saying 201 over 1,000, you can read it as 201 thousandths. It is a part of the whole, and the whole here is the thousandths. Same up here. Instead of reading 1 over 1,000, you could read 1,000th.